best practices in graphing and more from an advanced point of view. Uh, what I want to do is first off show you how I like to build a bit of a graphing slash pivot table toolkit or workbook in Excel that has a nice nomenclature as to where you're putting your data, where you're putting your pivot table, where you're putting your chart, and we'll talk through a couple of examples there. And then we'll also talk about how you could kind of auto-populate and then filtering graphs, which I find either doing it through pivot table filtering or through the actual static I guess file that we have that you may have graphed in kind of a static object. We'll show you the difference of what I mean there. But in either case, you can filter, and I do want to talk through that as well. So I have a few graphs here, and we're going to work with these tools for the moment, and we may move on to others as time goes on. I have about 4 or 5 files that I hope to show you today, so bear with me. But so bear with me just one more minute. I just want to get my screens a bit organized here. Okay, so first off, I was going to dive into this payable sample pivot table and head over to the payables data. Now, I almost want to, in some way, maybe make a tab color for this as being the full data. So, make that one a blue with a white or something like that, so you really know that that's the data that you're going to be using in your pivot table. We then create pivot tables off of that, this one just being on the first digit of the Benford's number. We calculated that in this spreadsheet here, and again just carried it forward. Don't want to really make it a course about Benford's law or anything, but excuse me, with that said, this is then kind of a pivot table or an application, or however you want to call it, a middle layer in between the data. Here's your calculations, and then here is the graph, and here's the chart. So this may be a way for you to document anything basically that's blue and has data after it. I know is the full raw data from a nomenclature point of view, and then anything that just has like a name to it is in essence something that is more of a calculation. But anything that has chart at the end of it would be an actual chart. And there's ways to organize this better, maybe put all your charts together, or however you want to do it, to present things. But it kind of goes to the theory here that if you could learn just how to pivot table in Excel, and we'll do I'm sure a few just in this graphing session, not that it's a pivot table discussion today, but just to show you some pivot tabling. I think what you'll find is that you could build a toolkit that could auto-populate, and so again, first I wanted to get the nomenclature down of these 3 different types here, and then just kind of moving on here back to this payables data. So this is where I wanted to kind of show you what we learned the last time, and this is actually a free video out on Audit Software Videos. So this was the past course that we did on graphing, and in here we have this pivot getting all of your data, learning object. And okay, so why am I showing you this? For mainly to kind of to note to you that first, hold on one second, that we actually have it out on the web, and you do have all these learning objectives of the previous course, and AuditNet has a discounted link, and we can get that to you for that if you haven't seen this course or if you haven't signed up for this. But this is just in video form, and a lot of this talks about some of the more basic things that I'm not going to talk about today, such as like building a basic pivot table, etc. But if you go to the home page, just from a free point of view, and somewhere in here we have view a sample Excel video. What you can do is play this pivot all data video, and just going to mute that. What basically this talks about is how you could set up a pivot range, named range, and I'm just going to skip through this thing so I don't want to waste your time with it. But here is basically the main premise, is that that pivot range that we set up needs to equal this formula. And you copy it every time. There's no, it's just literally copy it in some way and save it, and then use it. And what's really nice about that, and just again, to get to this video, you just go to free videos on Audit Software Videos, and you can check that out. Is you can create a named range that will dynamically change as you put data into this toolkit. So in essence, if you do add a few more columns to the end of it, all of your pivot tables really still should run, because they still usually have all the old data fields in here somewhere, and because it's dynamically refreshing by pivoting for all of the data per that video, it'll basically dynamically figure out, well, I need to go to basically column P and row 4822, and if you added more columns, it would dynamically kind of grow to whatever that is. What that allows you to do is, when you set up your pivot tables, instead of setting up the let me just find this here. Guess you can't get it through there. So in changing the data source from your pivot table tools, you would actually enter that pivot range in here, and you'll see what I'm talking about in that video, but it'll be more of a dynamic range instead of this fixed range that we have here. And that will then capture all of the data, for purposes of the pivot table, but then more importantly, all of the charts that are based on it. So what I like to do, and this is probably not the best example, but notice how I have all these charts that have been developed in here. Once you've developed kind of that data engine that's going to always import the data that's available to it, once you have that, all of these charts will work, and because all the pivot tables will work, and they're based on, the charts are based on these pivot tables. You can build a pretty intricate set of graphs, and we're going to talk through these, but you could have probably 5 or 6 of these analysis kind of ready to go, and as you import the data, for the most part, I'm trying to think here, I think you just you go to this Benford number, in your pivot table tools, you hit the refresh button, and it would basically refresh this data set for purposes of seeing it. So I just want to get out of this spreadsheet here, so I go to view range. Oh, that'll be great. Okay, perfect. So what I also wanted to show you is how to filter, and we're going to talk about a few of these graphs, but for the most part, the filtering capability, I'm just going to turn off the filter and just say select all for a second here. That will change, at least, well, let's look at it here. I'm pretty sure that this one is hooked up to that data, so I'm pretty sure. So what we'll do is, to prove that, I'll just even say top 10. Yeah, so this is dynamically set. So what I wanted to get at, and just wanted to make sure that my actual graph was set up to the data properly here, was if you ever set up a filter on the data that you have graphed, it becomes a really nice way for you to filter on that data and be able to, either probably the easiest way would be, greater than or less than or equal to, and get something more relevant, for graphing purposes. Then go into your scatter value volume, and I think both sides of this should be just taking a look now at that new set of data that I've allowed into it. All right. Another way to filter, and something that I will actually go back to my payables one, and again, all of these are kind of preloaded, for you to take a look at. Right. So, in your actual any sort of pivot table that you may have, you can actually, again, I'm not going into all the pivot table, easy stuff. I'll just kind of show you more of the advanced stuff at this point. You can, in this one, as you'll see in a minute, this has everything in it. It has 2009 through 2011. And then if I go to the Stratify 2, you'll notice that I've actually gone into this filtering and taken away basically 2009, anything prior to March 24th, 2009, and then included anything greater than 2010. And that provides you with a more filtered view. Now, this is linked to this Stratify chart, and again, just to prove the point, I could take away 2011 and really just look at 2010, and now I'm just looking at 2010 in this chart. So, if you didn't realize that was there, the filtering capability of Excel is quite interesting when you're graphing, and really when you want to look at pockets of areas. Like, you might want to look at the small stuff separately than the big stuff, and that will come through in a couple of case studies that we're going to do a little bit later this morning and afternoon. But for right now, you'll kind of get the sense of why we're filtering and setting up different axes along the way. This is sort of another best practice in my mind that really isn't even using graphing, but is, and it's basically using conditional formatting on data, but looking at it in a very small kind of way, and all of what I'm saying will make a lot of sense to you in just a minute here. So let me jump into Excel. So what I wanted to show was I had basically created a pivot table, and it's really small, so let me scroll into it so you can actually see what I've done. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted to kind of show you obviously what I'm doing here, but it could be with anything that you're doing from a graphing point of view. On your rows and labels, I have journal entry number, and on the columns I have the account numbers that journal entry is posting to. And in many cases it's basically anything. In this particular filter, I believe I have it. It's between I think it's like 1 million and 50 million or something like that. So it's stuff that's material, and that's kind of a way of, obviously, as we showed just a second ago, how you can filter things out. But just imagine, again, this is journal entries down the rows here, and these are the journal entry or general ledger account numbers that are being posted to. Okay, so now I'm going to scroll out, and you'll notice here that there's red and yellow and green throughout, and it's something where this provides you almost a map of where things are big and small and that kind of thing. So how did I do this? Essentially, at a very, very small level, which I'm at right now, probably too small to really be of much use in a lot of ways, is let me scroll back into it just so I can, sorry. Alright. So if I just go right into the data area itself and make sure I'm kind of, oops, sorry. Okay, so not taking any totals into account, but sort of everything else. Now I'm just in the data section. I'm not the rows, I'm not the columns, I'm just the data in the middle. You can go to your home menu or part of the ribbon, go to conditional formatting, color scales, and select one of the color scales. It could be, red, white, blue, green. I did it green, yellow, red. And what it's basically telling you is that the yellows are sort of in the middle. The green is very large, and the reds are very small. And it's interesting, now that I'm looking at, my journal entry activity with the general ledger accounts here, you can almost see pockets of large entries, and anything that would be green, which would be this item here as I scroll now into it, all you have to do, by the way, is if you select an item, like if I select that green item there and scroll in, it's going to scroll right to that item. So 38 million is probably one of the largest items, in here. And let's look for the more red item, and probably I'm going to have to drive on this one because you probably can't really see my screen that well. The smallest one seems to be like maybe $3,000 that's in there. Largest one, again, would be the most green, and I think it was in the millions of dollars here. 38 million there. So okay, so that provides you the range. But what's more important about this, and again, it might take a little bit of thought and just take a look at maybe how many yellows are there, how many reds, and how many greens there are. It probably fits more of like a standard deviation or some sort of gets closer to the average with a few outliers. But if you pulled some of those outliers, this sort of graph not only it's basically a pivot table with conditional formatting. It provides the data label, but also, as you go into it, let's say that really large item, let's find it, I think it's this one. Well, this one's 22 million. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm, maybe I've made this its own. No, I'm pretty sure that that's still a pivot table, so if I double click onto that, it will drill down into the activity that's making it up in the first place. So that's something where, again, I think it's a very powerful quote-unquote graphing technique, but yet it's using pivot tables and being able to very quickly kind of format and get down there. But how do we get there? This could be done on any pivot table. I just think it's a way of almost graphing and providing the data labels at the same time of the particular information that you could then drill down on by double clicking on. The way we got there was conditional formatting, by formatting all the data, and you have a lot of different options here. I mean, I urge you to kind of take a look. I mean, they have all the data bars. That might be an interesting way to look at it. But I like the colors, and there is a way somewhere in here of how to filter by color and sort by color, so you can kind of have a little bit of fun with that as well.